What is going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Bobby Fi here with Kenny Hyder. We're going to be talking through the Waste Management Open. Look, we were here. Kenny and I were at this event last year, which between the rains and then all of the 5 million people that showed up, and then all the drinking and everything from everybody, and people throwing things, it was a wild event. They had to shut it down at certain points to re-enter. Kind of sad not to be there this year. Kind of relieved. A little bit of a combination of both for me. But I wanted to bring Kenny in here. Kenny had a nice week last week and knows a lot more about golf in general than I do. So I think it'd be great to start having Kenny more involved in these shows. I know that you guys who are on our site and in our Discord, you're familiar with Kenny, and he's playing more this year. So Kenny, how you doing? Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, good to be here. The biggest upset is that it's like 80 there this week when we dealt with like literally freezing temperatures and hail, and we're freezing our asses off in Arizona. But whatever. It was a good betting week for us overall anyway. So that was a good one. We got the hat on for luck. So yeah.
Well, this is going to be an interesting week for one major reason, and we'll get into. I'll share my screen and we'll go through the tiers and everything. But I don't think you'll ever see, and I thought it would be last week. It was close. I mean, but this week, I don't think I've ever seen a projection where a player's like almost 30 points higher than the next highest player projection wise. It's going to be, which means that anyone, which is everybody's going to be playing. It's going to be like 70% Scheffler this week. I don't think it's going to be 50. I don't think it's going to be 60. I think it's going to be 70s. At least in high buy-ins or single entry, you might see it as high as 80, which in golf, the general rule is like, don't do that. Just don't play anybody who's ever projected like that. The problem is, what is his real downside here? Not to mention it's a course he plays well that, like, it's just an interesting conversation, and it's going to be where we're going to have to start things off, because I'm almost always going to take an underweight approach in a sport like golf on a situation like that. And I'll do the same thing in NFL with a guy who's in the best spot ever. It's just, there's too much variance involved, but man, it's hard to know what to do here. And you can make a case for locking him in. I think there are cases to be made for, hey, what do my lineups look like if I just X Scotty out? Dangerous. You'd have to be willing to just lose that money, but there is something to be said for this. So we'll get your thoughts on this. I'm just going to share my screen and show you guys what I'm talking about here. You see over here, and what I did with my projections, and I encourage everybody to do before we go over to Kenny and talk about Scheffler and the top range. Sheets will have his projections up later today. He's going to go through, he's going to do a live sweat show later tonight, talk through some builds. But I've been using a combination of Goldie with SaberSim ownership, a combination of SaberSim with Goldie ownership, or what I've sort of really come to like is to averaging it out, as long as the numbers are pretty much in line, as well as making a couple tweaks for myself for some players that I like a little bit more than others. This was my first run of builds and my exposures. It will have no reflection on what I'm actually going to do. It's before I've made as many changes as I want, etc. But I really want to encourage people, if you want to be different, and the name of the game in golf is so often being different, use Sheets and Goldie's projections with the SaberSim builder through TrueDFS, and you're already getting different. This is where Sheets and Goldie's simulation, projections really shine. Football, golf, pretty much anything other than basketball, they are phenomenal. And even in basketball, they're good projections. They're just impossible to update with the speed of things that when you got a guy announced out 5 minutes before lock, which happens every single day in basketball. So it's a very different situation. Anyway, I would encourage people to use a combination of it, and also try that average it out if you don't want to go all the way. But that's what I built these based on the average projections between Goldie and Sheets. And as you can see, Goldie's got a much higher projection on Sam Burns than he's got him at 80. SaberSim's got him at 74. That's a pretty big difference. So I'm obviously getting to a lot more Sam Burns than the field is as of right now. But Kenny, I'll get your overall thoughts on what to do in these type of situations, and then we'll start talking about the top tier.
Yeah, so I think it really is. I mean, it's a really big decision on Scotty this week, and it's funny that it is. Like, why is it a big decision? And I think that most people are just going to lean that way and just lock him in. And what we see consistently week after week, when Scotty's in the field, even when he doesn't win, he's in the winning lineup on the lotto. Like, right. It's never, I don't think, happened once in the the whole past season where he wasn't just in the winning lineup no matter what, even if he's not in the optimal. So I think
A couple.
maybe maybe like, for what was it when he went to jail, like, yeah, he didn't do so well, but I think, the interesting thing about the slate is, I started all my builds just locking Scotty and just to see what you can do, and you can get Scotty and JT and dig deep, and I like some dig deep plays, but at the end of the day, there's just, it's a full field cut event. You can't be loading up your roster with, 4 guys that are under 7K. That's just too risky. You know what I mean? So I think if, in my view, if you're going to try to fade Scotty, literally it should just be game theory, and you just go for, the lowest projected owned guys, Sung Jae and Burns and Hideki, and just fade Justin and Scotty together. You know what I mean? But and that kind of opens up, a whole lot of other different combinations, which I think in and of themselves will get different, but still, do we think that the winning lineup this week is going to not have Scotty in it? I don't think that that's likely. I mean, he was, first week back after injury and missing the first 2 tournaments of the year last week, and still top 10, and was number 1 in approach. So, odd week, whatever. And this week is a much lighter field for him. You know what I mean? There's all of the other guys aren't there. So, I mean, barring Hideki and JT, and well, I guess maybe you could say Sam Burns, but Sam Burns just, it seems to not be on as many people's radars this week, even though first thing I heard Monday morning was a comment from my dad about how he heard that Sam Burns was going to be hot this week. I was like, where'd you hear that? He's like, oh, PGAtour.com. I was like, well, yeah, okay.
No, it is interesting because everybody I've listened to so far, which again, it was mostly last night. So I'll update it like later today, and for everybody on our site, you guys know what I do. I'll put my core plays, but I also put all my exposures exactly to each golfer. And some people find it useful. For a while when I was struggling, I say, hey, just fade this. Although with my golf, it's actually been pretty solid. And I would encourage people to at least take a look at it who are site members. But I also think like the thing with Burns that's interesting to me is that I mean, you'd almost never see any of the high owned plays really low owned. And I think Burns is going to be so low owned because I think there's like sticker shock price. Like, why is he in the same category as Hideki and Justin Thomas? And maybe he shouldn't be. But when we're playing a 1 slate sample size, 1 4-day tournament, my argument would be to be overweight a guy like that because of that situation and the way perception works in golf. Even if like if you play this tournament 10 times, my guess is JT and Hideki finish ahead of him at least 7 of them. But you're playing for the outlier, right?
Right. So the one thing, going back to the initial look at the models and what your process was. So I have a kind of a similar thing, but a little bit of a different, simpler take is I also I like using Goldie's. I typically use Goldie's projections just straight up. And then everyone, you click build the first time, whatever. So what I typically do is I go through and, on my first serious kind of like, let's see what shows up after I've run it one time just to warm it up kind of a thing. I just set a 1% minimum exposure to every golfer that I like in the field that I want to play, including, Scotty through
so that's step 1, right?
Right. Step 1. And then also all the way down to the 6K, just 1% minimum. And then I run it and see, okay, now what comes up? And now, there's always a couple guys that I want to, that I get way too much exposure to that I don't want. So you try to tamp those down, et cetera, and try to get it to a place. There's a couple of conviction plays I have this week in the mid range that I definitely want to be over the field on, and then, run it another time and kind of see what comes up. And when I did that exact process, after running contest sims and all that stuff, I'm getting, basically 50% exposure to Scotty. And then, drops down to like 25 and 20% for every, and the top next guys.
Right.
And I think that, it probably, it's a really hard thing. Cause I'm in a max enter the $5 this week. And, it's really hard to click lock on 150 lineups, especially when it's the top price guy. Like if what if, Burns and Hideki end up in the top 5 and Scotty's 6th, then, you're missing out on a lot. You know what I mean? So, but I still think that, it's kind of like you're probably right. I can't imagine the higher buy-ins and single entries and stuff like that not having 80% or maybe even more of Scotty.
Mhm.
So that's my question to you is, so how do you balance that? Like maybe you go heavier on Scotty on bigger field events and then try to get tricky on the single entries. Like, is there a way to kind of balance it out between styles of tournaments and sizes,
So,
or,
so I think that's an interesting. It's really interesting, and we could talk endlessly about it. And I think that what I'm finding is, so my general rule, and I'll use NBA as an example, which is much more predictable. Although I would argue that Scotty is like the NBA play of golf, because there's not really variance with him. It's the projections are going to be closer to accurate with him than they are with any other golfer every week, because he just doesn't really have the phone it in weeks. You know what I mean?
Right.
He'll miss one cut every few years. Okay, whatever. That's
Yeah.
one weird thing like that. Okay, fine. Not always, but my ownership of him will be a reflection of how much I like other low owned things this week. So,
Right.
like, for example, and that's partly why I'm not just taking the fade approach, because it is tempting. I actually am tempted to try and run it for the $5 with no Scotty, and then the $25 just do my normal amount of Scotty or whatever, because I actually think that there is an edge to be gained. If you get a bad week, you could tweak something. This is not an elevated event, although it plays a little bit like one, even if it's not. You know what I mean? It's just
Right.
a lot of energy.
Yeah.
It's the most people ever that will watch a golf tournament the rest of the year in person. So it's the largest, largest audience. So anyway, so I happen to like a lot of low owned things. Otherwise, if I found myself like, oh, I kind of like the chalk this week, I probably would be getting off of Scotty. And like I said, these early exposures, don't pay attention to them, as they're not my final ones. My final ones will go to everyone in our Discord, and I'll post my stuff. But this is what I got after my first builds, just using some min maxes, some of Goldie and Sheets' projections. So with that said, and we're going to have to figure out how to do this, but there's only 4 guys in the 10K plus range. I guess, where do you expect to be maybe relative to the field on these guys? It sounds like you're sort of with me, like in the maybe 50% range of Scotty. What about the other 3?
Probably 50%. Yeah, around 50% of Scotty. I'm going to definitely be overweight on Sungjae, because I think he will be. I guess he's not 10K.
Yeah,
but
he's just under. That's okay.
I view him in that light, so that's kind of how I've been looking at these guys. But I think that Burns is going to be more popular than projected, just because he was named on the PGAtour.com Monday morning. Like anyone that's not super dialed in, that's using the PGA Tour as like a primary source of information, is going to be on Burns. People are going to be off of Hideki, which I don't mind as much either. I mean, I know he's having a great start to the season, but it's not a huge event for him. He's, we know his withdrawal history. I'm not saying that there's any reason to suspect that, but if I'm going to fade a guy, and there's only 4 of them, and Hideki's one of them, is probably going to be him, just for probably just because of how many times I've been burned in the past. But and then I'm probably going to be underweight on JT, just because I'd rather spend up for Scotty, and I have a lineup. I have I built one template, like with Scotty and JT in it. But like I said, then you're really digging deep, and I think that's just I think that's too risky. Like I would like, I think a lot of people are going to start Scotty and then figure out where to go next. I think they're going to go to Burns, and then I think they're going to go heavy into the 9K range. So I don't know. I think 50% on Scotty, and the rest will just sort themselves out, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Okay. So no, I like this. And this is crazy, this number. I'm trying to average. I'm trying to get to numbers that actually make sense to me for the ownership, because so Goldie's got Burns at almost 17%. I think that's closer than the 5% for what it's worth. So if you average, it's gonna average you out throughout all of these different types of tournaments. Okay, which is fine, because I'm playing in these other types of tournaments as well. The problem is, I think that the real number on Burns, I'm going to I'm just going to say 10% is going to be.
I think it's going to be closer to 20.
You think? Here's the argument for it being not closer to 20. Scotty going to be in more than 60% of the lineups is my guess. Maybe 75%. It really might be that high. It might even be higher. I think you're going to see Justin Thomas, who I think is actually going to be closer to he'll be the one in the 20s, in my opinion, or right around 20. Hideki is going to be right around 20 or more with the history there. I don't see people playing Burns over those guys that much. So I think it'll be less. That's just my take. And because of it, I'll have more exposure to Burns. But we're going to get into this in the next tier, because the one I also don't think anyone's, going into it trying to play Burns over Im, who's hand building. Sungjae obviously has a better projection. He's overall been a much better golfer than Burns. Burns is also the one that cost me almost winning it was $5, but it was $100K for first last year, and I almost won that one. Burns was the one I needed something from him down the stretch, and he just ended up parring out. I think the last 8 or 9 holes, something like that. So I couldn't quite get him there. I needed a couple birdies from him to basically get the win. But he played great on this course. I don't remember where he finished, but it was somewhere fairly high. Anyway, so I am okay with
tied for third.
Tied for third. Okay, yeah. So he finished. Yeah, exactly. I guess I needed him second or something like that. I needed him. Whatever. I needed a few extra points. That was the difference between me and Yeti, because I finished right there. Anyway. So look, Scotty, I'll be slightly below the field. Justin Thomas, it's tempting to say I'll be below the field, but I probably don't if I'm going to be below the field on Scotty. I'm okay with being below the field on Matsuyama, and I want to be over on Burns because I think he's going to be the lowest owned. So we'll get into it when we go at the end. We'll do our predictions of our favorite to do whatever from each range. But as of right now, I think I'm overweight Burns, and if it's possible, somehow maybe underweight the other three. We'll see, because this next range is where I think you get the chance to get some real edge, just from a game theory perspective, because you look at these ownerships, right? Like we're looking at only one player double-digit owned in the entire 9K range. That's wild, and there's 8 golfers here that are pretty damn good golfers. So. My approach would be maybe you do have some lineups where you skip the 10K range and you jump on down here. Right now, you can see I'm underweight him on my first runs. I don't know that I'm really going to be that much underweight him, but talk about the 9Ks and the guys you like, because I don't think they're going to show up for almost anybody, and that for me is just okay. I'll go out of my way to play them then. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I really like Sungjae this week. I like him at this tournament. I like his stat profile for the course. I also like that there's no crazy weather projected, so it should be pretty straightforward stat golf. You know what I mean? He's also had a decent history here. Played 4 times out of the last 5 years, made every cut, as high as tied 6th, and as low as still making the cut but last in the field. But which was last year, which was also the most volatile year with the most crazy weather and stuff. So, kind of have to throw some of that into this, into the wind. But outside of that, I actually think that it's going to be a little bit higher owned in the top end of the 9K range than is projected anywhere, just because, people are going to go Scotty and then they're going to dip, and they're going to, they can save a little bit skipping down from the 10Ks and getting into this range. And a lot of people are going to like Sahith this week. A lot of people are going to like Tom Kim this week. A lot of people are going to like Sepp this week. So I think all of those are going to be a lot higher. Oh, Sepp is actually projected pretty highly. I see him as high as 18% on some sources, projected ownership. So, for me, I like Sungjae. I'm going to be definitely over the field on him. And then I'm skipping all the way down to basically the bottom of the 9K range. I don't think that I need to really be on Tom Kim this week. I know it's going to be one of those weeks that he's, he likes the crowd. He's a get up guy and stuff, but he's not been in the best form lately, even though he had a good week last week.
Pretty good last week.
He was pretty good last week, but the leading up to that, he was cut at the Amex, bottom of the field at the Sony Open. And also this week, it's more of a driver's course than I've heard a lot of people talk about. It's a long course, par 71, and it's still like 7,200 yards or something like that. And he just doesn't have a whole lot of weight off the tee. And again, I just think he's going to be more popular than projected. Sahith, I kind of feel the same way about, even though I do like him. I mean, I think, what was it, 2 years ago, we both had like hot lineups going into the day. And remember,
Yeah,
he
we had his coming out party year.
Yeah.
During
So
part of the COVID bubble or something.
right, and he blew it, and he lost us both money, I think, that week. But also, I think he's
Blowing it
going to
was
be.
pretty sad. We actually didn't
Yeah,
even
it's
have a
terrible.
shot.
Well, and in my opinion, he wins that tournament. He wins Player of the Year over Cam Young too, and that that was kind of an upset just because he's a California guy. I like to root for the California guys.
Yeah,
You know what
same
I mean?
here.
But anyway, and then Sepp, I know, is going to just be massively owned this week because of his performance last week, and that's I think he's overpriced just in general, even though he's been having a great start to the season. But when I see numbers approaching 20% for a guy who's 9,400 and his name isn't someone that my girlfriend would recognize, I think it's easy to fade. You know what I mean?
I like that. I hear you. So look, Sepp is playing probably the best golf of anybody so far this season who's actually played the events. He's been right in there. He had a bad Sunday last week. Could have easily won that tournament. Actually, sort of a bad very finish to Saturday. And then at one point, I think he was like 70% to win the tournament because he was like 4 strokes up on everybody. And then he just had a couple bad holes, which, it happens.
Melted. Yeah.
I think that lower ownership, and you could see I just adjusted while we were going through, sort of, because it's hard to split. Like, you want to try to you split between them. But like I said, it's factoring in every type of thing. And like I said, I'm in those as well. So I do have the average, but I want to put more what I think is going to be sort of the overall consensus. Because I kind of agree with you that they're going to be a little higher owned, certainly than SaberSim has them. I mean, SaberSim has Sahith at 1%. I don't think it's going to be 1%. I'll put it. Let's make it 3 just to make it a little more realistic. But I don't think 1% is a fair number.
No, I think, yeah, I see him between like 7 and 10.
That might be right. I might up that a little bit later today when I go through some of my other stuff. But I did want to up all these guys a little bit because I think it's being a little bit under projected by SaberSim, which means you're going to end up either with more of them or with none of them, depending on how the projections relate. So this was, again, forget this build because this is not what I have. The players that I set out to target from this range are Sepp and the Gala. And I do think the Gala ends up, no matter what, I think he ends up lower owned than he should be. It's recent perception, it's recent form. I understand it. He's played well at this course before. He gets up. He's a get up guy, like, you know what I mean. And he had the coming out party. He didn't really show. Again, he tried to drive the green on 17 and it took a bad hop. Otherwise, he wins that tournament. You know what I mean? And had bad hop into the water, and that was pretty much all she wrote. But was it 17? I think it was 17. Yeah, this is short par 4. Anyway, so I really like the idea of being overweight Thigala and Straka. So those were my main ones here. But I could make an argument for being overweight anyone in this range based on SaberSim's ownership. But as you see, I think it's important to go with what we realistically think the ownership is going to be. And it's tricky because I'm playing a bunch of different contests. You can see my 273 contests up there that range from the $5, the $25, the $888. And it's going to just, for anybody who's not used to watching our shows, it's going to plug in the tournament, the lineups that most fit that tournament for you on SaberSim when you use the contest sims. It's really important to know that because that really does help you with some of your decision making. You know what I mean? And I'll still always make a tweak to my highest buy-ins, but it is going to put these in the right spot for you. Anyway, this range, mostly Thigala and Sepp as guest differentiators. Do really like him. Don't love that. I think he's going to be the second highest owned play on the slate. And Goldie's got him at like 30%. He might be I actually think it's pretty safe to say he's going to be the second highest owned player on the slate. But again, my strategy, be overweight this range, whether or not it means I have to do min max or change the projections of the players. I want to be overweight the 9 and the 8Ks and underweight the 10Ks. That's just, doesn't mean I won't have them. It just means I'm going to be underweight. That's my strategy for this week, as of right now, at least.
I like it. I'll probably take a similar stance, but just with the opposite, with all of the lower, I'll probably go like Corey Connors and Hogard just because they're like the lowest, you know what I mean? And just see what happens when that comes out. And actually, I've heard a lot of talk about Hogard and, other podcasts and stuff this week. And it's interesting to see that he's still projected like sub 10%. So
yeah, it's a little weird, right?
Yeah. And his stats actually rate out pretty well for this. He's one of the longer drivers on tour, and he's been playing really well. So that might be something that I'm gonna have to look at.
Yeah, I'm gonna change his projection a little bit because of how good he's been. Just again, it's something I'm still figuring out the best way to work these things, but it's worked out well enough for me so far. So
Yeah.
sometimes I'll change projections, sometimes I go min max. It really depends. But I agree about the Hogard play, and I think he actually ends up being the as Sheets would call it, the hipster play in this range. You know,
Yeah.
the one who no one thinks everyone's playing, but everybody ends up actually playing it.
Yep.
All right, so now we get back into the under 9K, and you're going to have to explain a few things to me, and before you go through what you like, why, and this is pretty much across the board. I've looked at a number of sites. I haven't seen Nick Taylor above 10% on any of them. So he's in the best form of his life, basically. He won this tournament last year. We're just saying because he won it last year, oh, what, he can't win it again? Or is it because he's 8,400 and people don't think he should be 8,400? What's going on with this? I'll be way overweighted no matter what you tell me. But what's going on with that? And then what do you think of the 8K range?
Yeah, I think that's way wrong. I do see him as high as 14%.
Okay, I didn't see that one.
But and I think he's going to be a lot higher. Like he's going to be, I think a lot of people will actually, reach right on down from Scotty to Nick Taylor, just because he did win last year. He's been great this season already. He already won this year in the calendar year. So no reason for people to really be off of him. Even though he's not like, the longest driver or whatever, he's got an all around great game, all together. He's got a great approach. And obviously he's a great putter as well, which, these are huge greens and stuff. So I think one of the things I kind of have an eye on is, some of the longer, like good putters, you know what I mean? Just because it'll be easy to get on the green this week, as long as you have the distance.
Right.
But I think that he's going to be definitely double digit owned, if not, 15% or maybe even, closer to 18, something like that. I don't know. The rest of the 8K range, I really like a couple and really don't care for the rest. I really, really like Kurt Kitayama this week. He on paper has basically everything you need. I know that he, his last appearance was cut, but that was at the Farmers Insurance, and he was in the wrong wave. That's kind of an outlier week with that the way that Torrey played. So I'm not really too worried about that. Going back even further, like not the greatest, but he's great off the tee. He's great on approach. He's one of the highest in the field, tee to green and overall, and he's got a ton of distance. So I like Kurt this week. I also really like Mav McNeely, who I was very heavy on last week. I think a lot of people were. Everyone knows that he lives on Pebble, so there's a lot of expectation out of him last week. He also had one of the worst weeks of his career in approach, I believe it was. So, kind of a really bad week for him. There's no reason for him to not be able to bounce back. And he still, he made the cut and, tied for 40th or whatever last week. It's not like he was a losing play. He is more expensive this week, but I think that he's going to actually probably be under owned. I think that he's probably projected. I see him as high as, 12% or something like that. I think he's going to be under that. And I think that people are going to get off him this week just because the narrative isn't there, but the facts are his, all around stats really look good here as well. Other than that, for me, it's mostly fades. I think that, Spieth is probably the riskiest one because he's always the riskiest one to fade, but I don't think that he's going to end up being too high owned. And I'm not really too concerned based on his recent performance being pretty terrible. I think that people are going to be over the weight on Gracerman, even though he had a withdrawal this week, and I'm fine fading him there. He's just, he's not Jordan Spieth or Wyndham Clark or Nick Taylor, so I don't know why he's in the range with these guys. But other than that, kind of really falls off for me. And my next real conviction play in the 8K range is JT Poston. So other than that, probably be mostly off of this range. I also think Luke Clanton is going to be, massively over-owned this week, just because there's been a lot of talk about him, and he's been hot and he's an amateur and everything. But I just don't, I think that it'll be chalk that I can avoid.
I might take the Clanton bet with you because I am not sure that's going to be the case. I mean, I feel like somewhere around 10% is where it would be the maximum. I think perception matters a lot, and he's the trend for him, and also like the thing for guys who haven't played here before is a big deal. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I think he is going to be lower owned this week. I moved him up to 7. SaberSim's got him at 3.9. That's not going to happen. It'll be higher than 5. I don't think it gets much above 10, and I kind of like him actually, but we'll get into that in a minute because the guys for me are mainly Taylor and you named it, Kitayama. I actually put a min max on those guys to have at least 15% each. Kitayama finished 8th here last year, could have actually been better. Suits him. Long and accurate long and accurate on approach. This is a good course to be long and accurate on approach. In fact, most courses are good to be long and accurate on approach. but this one actually plays into his favorite a little bit better than most courses would. So I really like Kitayama. I am not this person who believes you can't win tournaments back-to-back times. I don't know. Or not, by the way, Nick Taylor doesn't have to win. He can come in the top 10, and that would be lovely at 8,400. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I really like Nick Taylor. Really like Kitayama. And you can see what I'm doing is sort of tweaking some of the things that I feel like are a little bit off. And again, I'll go through this later, but whether it's projections, in some cases it'll be min-max exposures, but trying to get to a little bit more of things I like because I too kind of like Mav McNeely, but I feel wishy-washy on him. Maybe it's because he's let me down too many times. Maybe it's too much personal. Other than that, I want to see the Cam Young resurgence. We haven't really seen any signs of it. I'm disappointed in that because I really like Cam Young, and I think he's got the ability to be an elite golfer. And we have not seen much of that recently. He still hasn't won a tournament yet, but he's another one that I bumped up his projection a little bit. And the one I think is kind of the most interesting to me as to what to do, or the two that are most interesting are these last two guys, are the JT and I'm confused about why this ownership is so high on Siwoo. I really do like Siwoo, but at 20+%, I might have to think about something else. I still think he's being a little underprojected on SaberSim. I'll go a little bit higher on him. That's still probably a little too high. Let's go back to 6. Let's go to 69, 68. I mean, it's fine.
Who has him at 20%?
Yeah, and that might be real. I've heard a lot of things.
No, who? I don't see that.
Goldie has him at SaberSim has him at 21%.
I thought Goldie had him. I thought I was on Goldie's right now, and Goldie had him at.
Goldie's got him at. Goldie's got him at 10%, 9%, 9.83. SaberSim's got him at 21. That's probably honestly don't know what that's a result of, to be honest with you. I do think that close to 20 is very possible from what I've heard this week. People really like him here. I do like he and Poston. They are going to be the most popular in that range. But because I'm making some differences, I'm not so worried about the ownership as it applies to those two as I would be some other guys. So let's just go back to, we'll go to the average, 68.27. We'll leave that there. And then we'll go to for the ownership. I'm going to go a little bit more towards Goldie here. I think 15 feels closer. I think 15 I can live with as a median for these guys in terms of overall ownership, rather than going with these extreme numbers on both sides. I don't think it's going to be 7, and I don't think it's going to be 25. So I'm sort of going in the middle on that one. All right, let's do 7,500 to 7,900.
Yeah, so this I think is going to become one of the most important ranges because of Scotty particularly. As soon as you click Scotty's name, you're immediately looking at 77.5 or something, right? Average. Right. So I like a lot of people in this range because I've been staring at it for 2 days because of Scotty, and that kind of scares me a little bit. But I'm not too worried about it just because there's a ton of variance, and there's actually quite a few golfers in here with some good history and good recent form. Number one being obviously JJ Spawn, who also is rated at the highest projected in this range outside of Harry Hall, which I think is another thing we'll get to in a minute. But for me, I feel like not too hard for me to get off of JJ Spawn chalk, even though he's been good to me. I really like Minwoo Lee, another guy who's really long off the tee, good with long irons, and has been in great form recently. And, actually had a good start to this tournament last year. I remember we were watching him getting followed around by like a crowd of like 100 people wearing chef's hats.
Yeah, that was wild.
But so I really like Minwoo Lee this week. Then I also really like Bo Hostler, just because I think that he's going to be under-owned in the range. I don't think he's going to be a name that people are going to immediately want to click. But he's been in great form. He's got, great all-around stats, and, he's had some experience here, even though, it's not the best record here. I think course experience and having made a couple cuts here and done okay will come into play for him this week, especially having been in better form going into this week than he ever has been any previous year. Outside of that, my biggest conviction play on the entire slate is in this range, and that is Matt Fitzpatrick.
That's why I was going to go bump us up. Okay, talk about it.
So everywhere I see him projected as like one of the lowest owned in the range. I don't think that makes any sense. I don't think it makes any sense that he's $7,700. He's not had the best recent record, but he's been fine. He's certainly fine for 7,700. And at sub 10% ownership, I'm ready to just play him all over. So he's going to be probably my highest owned or close to highest owned player on the entire slate, probably outside of Scotty. I'm really hoping he has a great week. Also, one of the things that I think a lot of people are maybe forgetting about him is, if you're considering this being kind of a driver heavy, longer course, all last season, he forgot that he had weights in his driver. And then as soon as he remembered and took him out, he started driving great. So, and we haven't really seen him since that happened. That was at the end of the, Tour Championship. So we haven't really, had the opportunity to see him rip the driver this past several weeks. Haven't been, outside of Torrey, which he didn't play, haven't been driver heavy courses. So, I think that he's going to come out and really make a lot of people think, oh, wait, how did I forget about Fitz? He's a US Open winner. You know what I mean? And then other than that, for me, it's Billy Horschel, who also has a great record here, has been in, okay form lately, but I think the history here for him and the crowd, he's another kind of likes the crowd kind of guy, does well in that kind of environment. So those are going to be my biggest plays. We're just doing top of the 7K range, right?
So just 75 to 79.
Okay, so 75. So then one more for me will be Keith Mitchell.
Interesting.
Who I think also is going to go under the radar this week. Has good history here. Hits it long and straight. Great approach. Great putting. Great weighted strokes all over. And just hasn't had the best start, but he's made every cut so far this year. And this is one of those courses. Cashmere Keith is going to come out and show all the college kids what's up. So
I'm into the. I like that idea, and he's the first name you brought up. He and Fitzpatrick that I was sort of like didn't think of. I thought of him, but I sort of skipped over it in my head. But you make a good case, and I think Keith is actually like. I like him here, and like you said, he's been decent here in the past. So I've got some pretty strong, again, forget the exposure right now. It's different. I just moved Goldie's projections over because I do think the SaberSim, something's up with their ownership right now. They've got Horschel at 26% almost. That doesn't seem realistic to me.
Whoa, no, that seems.
I don't think that's real. So either way, okay, so just in terms of guys I like the most, I like Minwoo, I like Andrew Novak. Those are two guys. I'm going to keep riding this Novak wave, by the way. He's playing great.
Novak was the other guy, by the way, that my dad mentioned Monday morning. The two guys that are supposed to be hot this week are Burns and Novak. And I was like, where did you get this information, Dad?
That is pretty wild. I didn't
Andrew Novak's never come out of your mouth before.
Andrew Novak hasn't come out of hardly anybody's mouth before.
Right.
I'm just going to go real quickly, just double check that I'm not hallucinating on this one. Yeah, he finished 8th here last year also, and I believe he was the leader he was in second place after 2 rounds. And he's playing great right now, and he's had good history here. That's good enough for me at low ownership. And actually, I'm kind of agreeing with the 7% as being the number on him. I'm going to bump up his projection. I also put a minimum exposure on him. So I think Novak is very much in play for me. But Novak and Minwoo, and I would like to get a little bit more. I'd like this projection to be a little bit higher on Minwoo. Novak and Minwoo are probably my two highest owned, along with Harry Hall. I will keep riding Harry Hall. I believe in this guy, and like watching him play. I'm into that. I also think everybody overplays Fowler here, but then you look at his results historically, and they're all really good. So I will probably have some of it, but I will be higher on Sam Stevens than I will be Fowler. And Kenny's talked me into a little bit of Fitzpatrick and a little bit of Keith Mitchell. Davis Thompson, I never get right. I just let them do what they. It's one guy whose projections I never touch really. I just say, okay, I know I'm going to get some of them because every single tournament, for some reason, he projects well on SaberSim. And if I end up with him, I'll take him. If not, I won't. I did not get to the Bo Hostler myself as making a stand either. That's the other guys I didn't really touch. But I do like some of these guys down in the 7K to 7,400 range. What do you like here, Kenny?
So this is where it starts to get a little dicey for me. There's a couple plays that I like and a couple that I'm curious about. Starting off would be Denny McCarthy. Purely going back to what I said earlier about having the eye on some great putters. He's also a guy that's been in pretty great form recently, barring Pebble Beach last week, which is fine, and has some course history here, even though not the best. Next for me would be Tom Hoagie, even though he's one of the ones I'm maybe a little more questionable about. He's been in good form. He rates high on long iron play, but he's one that I'm going to be rostering with a little bit of hesitation, but we'll still be rostering anyway. And then next will be Ben Griffin, who I actually think is going to be probably higher than projected own here. It seems that I've heard his name a lot already this week, so I feel like he's going to be a little bit on the higher chalk side for the range, but also a guy who has great all-around stat profile, including off the tee and approach numbers, and who also played last year and did fine. So, and I actually think it was right around this time last year that he really popped up on my radar because he was had a really good start to the season. So I don't I tend to skew a little bit heavier on recency bias than I know you do, but I do think I don't think that it's all necessarily the thing that you should do every time, but I also kind of have some sort of similar bias in terms of swings and times of seasons when golfers get better. Like it just it makes sense that the lesser known guys do better in the beginning of the season because the strength of the field isn't fully there. You know what I mean? So yeah. He was one of those names that kind of popped out to me last time this year, and I think that he's been doing great recently. So I'll be trying to play him a little bit this week as well. Then really I only have, I guess two others, one being Gary Woodland, who I'm hoping ends up as low projected owner as he is currently, because I see him like sub 5%.
Yep.
And he has also, played here a bunch with bad history, but he's also been in really bad form all the other times he's played. And he hasn't been he's been in great form recently since his surgery and everything. And I think he's going to definitely be a sneaky, salary saver for me in a lot of spots in GPPs. And then also the same with Lee Hodges, who I was also, big on last week, did great last week, and I'll be back right at him again this week.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. As far as it goes for me, I still think Berger is going to start turning. I don't think he's going to necessarily be the same exact guy he was a couple years ago, but I do think he's going to start improving, and I'd like to be ahead on that. So I just thought I'd start mouth by mentioning him. But my favorite guys in this range, I like Ben Griffin. I'm just overweight him in general. I'll go back to Lucas Glover. I know he's complaining about the what's it called things on the course. But he played great last week, and honestly, that I played Lucas Glover instead of the Lee Hodges. didn't have to worry about that quad on 18
Yeah,
to me the win. I would have won easily. And I did. I by the way, I had more Glover than I did, just the way things work out in certain lineups.
right.
Other ones that stood out to me again. I think Doug Gim bounces back here. I think Taylor Moore is a guy, another one I'm always a little bit over on. It works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. I don't mind your Gary Woodland call. For some reason, I think I just had a little more in the upper range than I do here. But I do think Berger is the one I'll be overweight on a little bit because I think people are afraid to play him. Berger, Glover, Griffin, and those are pretty much the main ones for me. Obviously, we got to get rid of this projection 0 here. One thing with if you average, you're going to get some projection on guys who aren't in yet until Goldie updates his thing. So Kuchar's obviously not in. Wait, there's somebody at the bottom of this that I liked. Again, you mentioned Hodges. I do like Hodges and again. And is it a mistake not to try and take another shot at Dunlap? Dunlap and Højgaard for that matter, the brother. I think it's probably right to take a little bit of a shot with at least one of these guys. I think the upside is very, very high.
Yeah, it is. The problem is Dunlap is just, it's probably just maybe an effect of not enough reps or whatever, but he rates out terribly off the tee, which is, I think, something that you really can't have this week. I know accuracy isn't that important, but it's, he doesn't have a ton of distance either. So, that in his accuracy stat is it's not all that great, but I like the play. I mean, he's been doing fine. He had a, decent little run in Hawaii and then, made the cut everywhere so far. Like, he was last in the field last week, but it's a weaker field. I don't know. That's an interesting one. Højgaard, not as much for me. Nikolai anyway. He just rates out. He just rates out really poorly across the, compared to the field. And when there's guys, below him, several that rate out better with higher projections, I just feel like he's not going to be making it to my roster.
That makes sense. All right, so we get to the under 6K range, and there's going to be a number of guys to consider. So why don't you start it off under 6K? Sorry, 6,900 under. I did want to mention I do like the Højgaard. I am going to do the Højgaard thing, the Nikolai Højgaard, for what it's worth. Am I crazy, or was there a time where Nikolai was way more expensive than Rasmus? Not long ago.
No, I think Mexico last year or something, he was like one of the top 10 most expensive guys or something like that.
Okay, I felt like there was a time where it sort of switched between them, but it could be in my head.
Yeah, no, no, you're absolutely right, I believe.
Okay. All right. We forgot, and I don't care how poor he's playing. He lives in Arizona now. He's one of us. He is like us, as I would say. Look, and I know it hasn't worked out so far for me, but I am going to get overweight the Homa-ness. I have to mention that one. I know. I'm okay. But look, it's essentially almost his home course now, and I'm talking about a huge percentage. I put him in on 5. I upped his projection a little bit, a couple points. We'll see. I mean, look, he's 70 x 100. It wouldn't be that hard, and he's the kind of guy these guys who are at one point great, they can find it again in a hurry. You know what I mean? And you're not just looking for the high finishes. You also want the guy who's going to go crazy and have the 8 under round potentially or something. I could just see him finding it. I don't know. I'm going with it. I'm going.
I mean, I would probably I would say maybe in Showdown might be a better play for him, but
yeah,
just with his with his recent form and it's just, I don't know. If he were so let me ask you this question. So in this sort of range, right, when you're digging and you got everyone's playing Scotty and you got to find some value, I feel like it's the lower down the list you go, the almost better it is to kind of isolate on the guys that are projected to be higher owned, because if no one plays Homa this week and he comes out and does something, who cares? Like, no one's going to have him. You know what I mean? But if if Glover, who's projected, double digits in the range, comes out and has a good week and you fade him, that's not going to be a good situation.
Yeah, I would look at it the opposite. I think it's the smartest way too for DFS in general. But I hear what you're saying. I just I'll always personally go the other way myself. And I'm just trying to get my active players here from so start off with the under 7K range, because I'm trying to get all my updated players who live in Arizona list, but I don't think this is accurate what I'm looking at right now.
So for me, there's really just a couple. I guess I got 4 targeted here in this. Oh, I guess I have 5 in this range. It gets pretty slim down here, especially in these full field events. So starting off will be, for me, Alex Smalley at 6,900, projected under 2%, who, got cut at the Farmers, which is fine because, as we know, that was a crazy weather tournament. And then, was 11th at the Amex and tied for 16th in Hawaii. He rates out actually really great on weighted strokes against the field in all categories. He's green across the board in weighted strokes gained for every metric, including a 1.7 on fantasy points gained. So, he's a guy that goes for it. He's got long distance. He's a birdie maker. So Alex Smalley will definitely be in a fair amount of my lineups this week. The next one dropping down with a similar sort of look in terms of green across the board weighted against the field is Frankie Kapan.
Coppin.
Shopping.
Okay. I've been playing him every week, so I'm pretty.
Well, that's good for me. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah. He's been on a great run, playing lights out. Seems like into the end of last season. And again, like I said, rates out green across the board in strokes gained and less than sub 1% owned. Next will be, and I think he's going to be a little bit more chalky just because he's been getting a lot more attention and obviously had, he lost in a playoff a couple weeks ago, is Nico Echeverria. This is a guy that I've liked since the end of last season. I think he's already starting to get a little bit more talk than I'd like, because I thought he was a really under the radar guy, but word's out about him now. So I think he's probably going to be closer to, over 5% owned or something like that, but that's still fine. I'm still going to be playing him, even though, he hasn't had the past greatest couple of weeks, but no reason for him to not bounce back. He got, 2 second places in his past 5 starts. So I'll be on him. And then the next guy, another green across the board guy, is Patrick Fishburne, who also just got cut a couple of times, but was top 10 everything seemed like before that, including both tournaments in Hawaii. So those will be my guys. Oh, and then we're doing 6,500 and above.
69 all the way down.
Oh, all the way down. Okay, so then a couple more guys. Chris Ventura is one, who also seems to have a pretty good stat profile, and doesn't have just a huge streak of missed cuts like a lot of these guys in this range do. Anytime I see like KH Lee, for example, right above him and at 6,600, has a T9 and then 6 cuts in a row going back. You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't need anything like that. So in this range, I'm really just kind of looking for guys that, have maybe made a couple cuts this season, have some good stats. And he's just kind of one of those guys. And then I will definitely be on Sam Ryder. Again, this year, I'll be on Sam Ryder every year after that iconic ace he made on 16 a couple years ago. And actually had, a pretty good week, but I think he fell on Saturday, or I think he had a bad Saturday that year, 2 years ago or something. But also a guy who has been playing well recently, and obviously has a great course history here. He's played here 5 years in a row. So, I really like that. There's not a whole lot of guys down in this range that have a ton of course history here. So the guys that have course histories here in this range that aren't all cuts, been cut, I'm going to really like. And then really just one more for me. Another guy who has been in pretty good form and green across the board in strokes gained weighted is Hayden Springer at 6,400.
Nice. Okay, so that's a good list of names there. I agree on the Sappin thing. Obviously, I want to keep riding this guy, and just no matter what, I don't care. He hasn't played here before or whatever. It's fine with me. Um, I like I'm getting to Patrick Rogers. I don't necessarily love the play. I'd be just as happy to play Bezadenhout. Rogers did look good for what it's worth. I'm fine with it. I actually would like to get, again, another guy I want to get ahead on is Jesper Svensson, but I feel like this may not be the right tournament. I just want to make sure I'll put a little number next time just so I don't cross him out. Jake Knapp looked great last week, and he's going to be an extremely high variance golfer, but he's really talented and he can hit it a mile. So I actually think that I'm going to bump him up a little bit, just a little bit in projections, and ask for what did I put him at early on? 7? That's a little high. Let's go down to 5. But I do want to get to some of it as a minimum. And then Kevin Yu, who most people may not realize is from Scottsdale, Arizona. I will play Kevin Yu. Yeah. And I'm going like I'm going to go 5% or more for most of the guys from Scottsdale. I didn't know JJ Spawn was from Scottsdale. I didn't know Wyndham Clark was from Scottsdale until this week. I forgot to mention Wyndham Clark, who I'm also taking this sort of similar to Homa approach. Just find it again, you fellas. We'll get there, and I'll be there when you do, because I'm going to be overweight these guys pretty much all the time because I don't think their careers are over. Other than that, let's see. Not really. Oh, I like Chris Ventura. I don't like the way that he's being projected. It didn't give me as much as I thought I would get, because I did try to put a minimum of him. Just gonna ump it a little bit because I'd like to be over the field on that. I do like the Chris Ventura idea, and theoretically, he should work okay at this course. Again, I didn't get too much of it in the builds, but I actually kind of like Chan Kim here. Lanto Griffin might be a little bit under projected on SaberSim and actually probably throughout the industry. So I'm going to bump him up a little bit. Carson Young, everybody knows, whoever watches, I'm always ahead on Carson Young. It doesn't usually take much. You just got to play like 2% and you'll be ahead of the field. So Carson Young is another one of my few percenters, nothing crazy. I'm curious to see how it's going to be when I rebuild. And I would have gotten to these guys more than I did. The problem is I'm fading a lot of the 10, or not fading. I'm taking an underweight approach to the 10K range, which means I didn't need this range as much. But this one I'm going to change manually. He lives in Scottsdale. He's starting to play a little bit better golf. Let's get some Joel Dahman, Bad Hat Joel Dahman, as my sneaky guy to make a run this week. So I like the Joel Dahman play.
Oh, that Joel Dahman, actually, I didn't star him in my list, but I put him in my initial 4 core builds. So
yeah, I like that. No, Dahman and you. If you're gonna play, the chalky Scheffler, maybe play some Dahman and you with it to get some low ownership and some serious upside from some Scottsdale guys.
Yeah, so, yeah.
I love the Scottsdale guys, man. I'm gonna. You cannot tell me, and you're a golfer. I don't actually golf. If you play the same course, if you play one course 12 times a year and every other course once or twice, don't you think that you have an edge at your home course? Like, isn't it logical? And it's not necessarily your home course for all of them, but they are going to play there if they live in Scottsdale a good amount. Nick Taylor was talking about it last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for this course in particular, in general, I think you're absolutely right. This course might weight a little less importance on that, just because a lot of this course's defenses are water and native area, right? So if you hit it in the water, you hit it in the water. Like, there's nothing, like, boom, 2 strokes. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing you can do about that. So it's not like the advantage for a guy would be knowing where he can hit it over the water.
Right.
But that doesn't really, it's not like, something like Augusta, where it's like knowing, oh, well, the slope of the green is right over there. So actually you want to bounce it this way to that, and have this angle in, you know what I mean? It's less of a, I think that like Pete Dye courses, I think that is a lot more, comes in a lot more into play, that are like tricky to the eye and having, knowledge of where you actually need to hit specific shots. Whereas this is more, you need to hit it long, you need to, have good long approaches, and then you need to be able to, make long putts, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, I mean, I generally, I like that. narrative anyway, especially outside of Florida, anywhere outside of Florida, right? I think Florida is, it's some of the most populous tournaments that golfers play year in, year out. So I think that there's less advantage for Florida guys at like Sawgrass than there are for Scottsdale guys here. You know what I mean?
So tell me if you agree with this or disagree. And I'm glad we're kind of running along because it's kind of fun to talk about some of this stuff in detail. Well, I would imagine West Texas, because the way the winds are, would Texas.
100%.
I would imagine that would be maybe the biggest advantage you'd have of being local. Is that
I think absolutely so. I think the second would be, California courses, because the greens are different. Putting on California greens. You know what I mean?
Although I don't know what's going to do this year, and who the hell knows what's going to happen with that turn.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen. I can't imagine they play it. All right, we're going to rebuild our things, but we're going to take our players from each range, and I'm going to give all of these guys one thing I do is I do this with Sheets. I do it with Kenny. We're going to pick a player from each range. We're going to pick one guy to win it. Actually, it doesn't have to be from that range. It just has to be at least at that range. You know what I mean? So you don't have to pick a 10K guy to win the tournament. But I always end up putting an extra min exposure on these guys. So this is the important category as I'm rebuilding my lineups now. All right, Kenny, let's talk about the 10K floor. Who's winning the tournament, I guess, instead of who's the 10K range.
Yeah, it's Scotty, right?
Okay, so yeah, that's an
easy one.
So Kenny's going chalk Scotty. That's the other problem I'm having with fading Scotty's. I don't really have a great answer to this question. It gets a little tricky. My sneaky one, I'll pick it for my next pick, so I'm not going to need to be sneaky. But I'm going to say Hideki. He's won it before. I don't feel great about it for what it's worth. I think.
Wait, he's won this before? I didn't know that.
Hideki's won it before. I'm pretty sure. I think he's got like 5 top threes or something. Somebody said something crazy about him. I couldn't remember what the stat is. Let me take a quick look at here. Hideki results. Let's see what I've got here. I think he's had some good finishes here. I'm pretty sure. Let's see.
222, 29, T8, 42, 16.
Maybe he didn't win.
Either way, he's definitely a better golfer this season than any other past season.
But it's weird. I might even be underweight my pick to win the tournament. That feels a little funky. Shoot. I guess this that question alone makes you know why Scotty's going to be as owned as he is.
Right.
It feels too aggressive to say Sam Burns, but that would be, I guess, the other one I would have gone for. All right. Top 5, Kenny. Under 10K to top 5.
Under 10K to top 5. I'm gonna go Kurt Kitayama.
Kurt Kitayama. Oh my God, you're taking one of my guys that I was going to save for later for a different range. Okay, that's great. So Kitayama gets a big circle because we both really like him. I'm going to go with the 9K. I'm going to go with Thigala as a sneaky one, and actually I think he's my sneaky outside chance to win guy. I'm going to go with Thigala there.
I like it.
All right, under 9K to top 10.
That's easy. Nick Taylor.
That's who I was going to pick after you took my Kitayama. All right. Well, me and Kenny hopefully will be battling it out at the top of the leaderboards because we certainly have a lot of the same things in common in this one. So I'm going to go in my other 8K range. What did I set here? I'm trying to double check because I had those answers locked and loaded. I have my terrible answer, but I don't think I can pull the trigger on it. I am going. You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to drop down a tier and say Minwoo Lee.
Oh, he stole mine. Nice.
That was for the next one. That's what you get. You take my guys too many times, Kenny. That's what I'm going to do. All right. So okay. So that's so I skipped the range and went down to Minwoo Lee. What do we have under 8K for you to top 20?
Matt Fitzpatrick.
Matt Fitzpatrick, my guy from last year, and you know my other thing that I like about Fitzpatrick is I believe of anybody if you watch that show on Netflix or anybody who knows anything about golf and has watched anything, you see that Matt Fitzpatrick is literally like he's so studious, he's determined. So every offseason when he comes back, even if he had sort of a down end of the year or whatever, I'm always ready for him to turn it around this next year. You know what I mean? I feel good that he at least put in the work. You know what I mean? He's out there slacking.
Yep.
So I'm going to go with Andrew Novak as my guy. And then we will go under. Did I miss her? No, that's right. We have deck 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Okay. So then we have the under. Then we should have 6. So under 9, top 20, top. So this is our top 20 guy.
And then your last one is a top guy to miss the cut or something, right?
I guess okay. So yeah. So okay, under 7K to make the cut.
To make the cut.
Or the best finishing make the cut, because some of these guys are going to make it.
I'm going to go Alex Smalley.
So you're going Smalley, and I'm going to go with Bad Hat Joel Dahman, but fun guy. And I also want to give it a little shout out. If Kevin Yu plays really well this week, guys, I want to see you guys hitting me up in the chat, because I think I might take a little bit of a stance on this Kevin Yu. I played him in like a bunch of things last week just because I literally needed the absolute minimum to go to 6,000. I have so many top like 35 finishes that you know, like in like single entry stuff that had Kevin Yu for some reason at 0.2% out. But that's my sneaky one. But Dahman is the other one though for me. So okay, so we have to pick one guy over 9K to miss the cut, Kenny. Some good options here.
Okay, 9K over 9K to miss the cut. I'm gonna say Sepp Straka.
Ooh, okay. So Straka to miss. All right, I am going to say that's interesting when I'm thinking about it this way. I'm going to go with a weird one that wouldn't have been weird last year, because I actually think he has a chance to win this tournament. But I'm going to take a real shot and say Justin Thomas.
Wow. Okay.
Samuel, I think we went through absolutely everything, including sub 5% owned plays. So I don't know how to answer that one right now. But if I had to, and also it's really hard to get a feel for ownership on these things. Golf, we know that there's a wide range of outcomes in ownership. I mentioned about 9 guys who are sub 5%, including Dahman and Kevin Yu. And Andrew Novak he'll be a little over 5%, but not by much. And I think Sneaky Homa and Wyndham Clark get it together at some point. Maybe it's the course that they're, Homa lives there. Wyndham Clark's from there. Maybe this is the Wyndham Clark Homa time. Kenny, anything that under 5% that just jumps out to you off the top of your head? You mentioned some guys who were there, but I don't. Oh, Fitzpatrick, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, is he under 5?
He's probably going to be a little bit over 5, but it's close.
Yeah. I think Fitz, definitely. Like I said, he's the biggest conviction play for me on this entire slate. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, when you watch this, give us a big like for Kenny. Make sure to like and hit the thumbs up. We were doing these videos for free, and then we also have a lot of stuff on our site that we would love for you guys to check out. So make sure to look at the membership page. Goldie and Cheats' projections are an incredible way of differentiating while using the SaberSim Builder. And I would really encourage people to try it out. It's worked out phenomenally for me. Football showdown. Hey, look, the biggest showdown of the year in all of sports is coming up for the Super Bowl this weekend. Now is a good time to try the trial. If you've already used the trial, take a look at some of these packages. They're really reasonable. I think they're priced very competitively. You get all of my content. You know exactly what I'm doing on every slate. All of Sheets' Goldie, Brandon Cruz, Adam Perry. Kenny's now getting in the streets for golf because he's back to playing again. So really, really come check out. We've got a great offering. And one thing we can promise you that other sites can't is every question and everything you bring up in Discord is going to be answered at some point by one of us. And that'd be me, Sheets, Goldie, Brandon, Kenny, anybody. We are here for the personal experience, and we think we have a lot of things to offer. So had to get that spiel out of the way before I said, Kenny, thank you so much for being here. It's always a pleasure to do this with you, and looking forward to a great season. Anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
Go Birds.
All right, go Birds. Let's go. Good luck, everybody, and hopefully we'll have a golf sweat leading right into the Super Bowl. Kenny's going to come over. We're gonna watch the Super Bowl together. So hopefully we'll be making a bunch of money on Sunday.